We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back for our final segment on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides. We're continuing to finalize our conversation with Tim Donner, longtime host of this here radio show. Tim, thanks for sticking around so long. So I have a question for you, Tim. Is America MAGA country?
That's a good stink bomb to throw into the room and then walk away and let.
All right. I'll give you some data on this. So I've been tracking the polling and the registration data for where party affiliation lies, and I found it pretty fascinating. So you've got Gallup polls that have U.S. political party identification and leaning, and they've been tracking it since 1992. Now, in 1992, the Republicans had the advantage in party identification and leaning over the Democrats. Ever since then, it's been Democrats with the lead until 2022 to now. It's now 46% would identify or lean with the Republicans versus 45% for the Democrats. And then to bolster that, and there's some from the Napolitan News Service just to kind of back that up. Now, breakdown between Republican, Democrat with leaners, Republicans 46, Democrats 41. And this is all a trend, Tim. It's been a trend for the last couple of years, and that more people identify with the Republicans, less and less people identify with Democrats. Now, of course, independents are still they're the big cheese, the head honchos in terms of numbers. But it certainly seems to me that America is leaning more red, and I wonder if that is solely, or at least mostly, because Donald Trump has brought people under the MAGA banner who ordinarily would not be a Bush supporter, for example, a Bush-type Republican Party supporter. How's that for a bit more background before I get your answer?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a whole lot more MAGA now than it was when Trump was first elected, when people were kind of rolling the dice and saying it's worth taking a risk on this guy, since Hillary Clinton thinks half the country or half of Trump supporters are deplorable and irredeemable, and she was so unlikable. So they kind of rolled the dice. I talked to many people who said, yeah, I voted for Trump, but I never thought he could actually win. It was like a protest vote. Not this time, because they know about his record. They know about his predilections. He has, seized control, full control of the Republican Party. He's been the dominant figure in this party for 10 years now. I think a lot of this about whether America is becoming a MAGA country will depend on who follows Trump into the White House. And what I mean is if the economy is strong, if these tariffs work, if people are really pleased with the closed border and the removal of criminal aliens and the reduction of waste, fraud, and abuse in government, and the reduction of the federal workforce, which everybody's always complained about, I think it becomes a matter of whether J.D. Vance or someone else can consolidate those gains as to whether America can become, instead of just right of center like it's been for a long time, a little bit more right of center. And an analogy would be the Reagan-Bush years. You had blue dog Democrats, famously, who came out, working class Democrats who liked Ronald Reagan. He won 2 elections overwhelmingly. But then in 1988, George H.W. Bush took the party back towards the establishment Republican direction. And lo and behold, 4 years later, Bill Clinton won back most of those blue dog Democrats and became president for 2 terms. So I think a lot of this is based on the personal appeal of Donald Trump and his policies. It's not an institutional position that he has. It's not institutional favorability. so much as it is favorability about this one man, just like it was with Barack Obama. The party, the Democratic Party, fell apart around him while he remained standing because he was personally popular. Now, of course, Trump has as many enemies as he does allies. But I think it's instructive. This is very interesting, Mark. For as long as we can remember, the conventional wisdom has been that when there's a high turnout in an election, it favors the Democrats, right? As long as Democrats get high turnout, they're going to win. Well, more than one political analyst, expert, pollster, whatever, has concluded now that high turnout actually favors the Republicans. And that, any complaints among the Democrats that Kamala Harris lost because she couldn't get her voters out. Actually, the conclusion was if more people had voted, Trump would have won by an even greater margin. And I think that also points to the idea that the country is solidly right of center right now. And part of that is because of Trump, of course, but part of it is because of an absolute repulsion to the woke policies of the Biden administration, which he wasn't able to shield like Obama did during his term. And he took the Obama policies and put them on steroids. And it's just wildly unpopular. The Democrats should have known it, but they still ran on it and they got their clocks cleaned.
Yeah, I wonder if part of the reddening of America that we're seeing in the polls is because people who would vote for a populist, because remember back in 2016, there was a lot of crossover between Bernie bros and Trump supporters. There was a lot of crossover there. So it was the populist vote that really won it for him, I think. And what we see now is you've still got the populists, but because Trump has become the Republican Party, they are now saying, well, I'm a Republican, but if Trump's no longer in the party, and as you say, if it goes back to something more like George H.W., will they then go back to independence, or will they then go to more to the left? Because wherever they can get their feed of populism. And as you say, I think it all depends very much on who the next GOP leader is, and if that's J.D. Vance. At the moment, he's if memory serves, he's the 11-4 favorite currently to win 2028. And that's what is that? It's like 26%, 26 to 27% probability that he's going to win. And nobody else is even really close. I think there's a last word on this, Tim. Will it be J.D. Vance come 2028?
Well, that would be the default choice right now, to be sure, who would be like a third term of Trump, just like Biden was a third term of Obama. But that depends. I really think that the tariff regime, the high risk, high reward strategy of Trump with these tariffs is going to determine the ultimate success of his administration. If what happens is what Trump expects or hopes or wants or some combination of those things, I think that J.D. Vance will be a strong favorite because of the popularity of Trump. But if, as some fear, we fall into a recession and the tariff regime does not work, then it opens a door for a Democrat to tack to the center, like I said, someone like a Shapiro or a Bashir, who can stand up to the left wing of their party. Because after all, in 1972, George McGovern suffered a disastrous defeat to Richard Nixon, but the party straightened itself out, tacked to the center, and Jimmy Carter won in 1976, though in large part because of the Watergate scandal. And also in 1988, Michael Dukakis he was defeated in a virtual landslide by George H.W. Bush, and the party straightened itself out and got Bill Clinton to run as a centrist, essentially, in 1992. So, the state of the Democratic Party now looks to be doom and gloom and hopeless, but things can change quickly in politics depending on the economy and depending on whether the Democrats can find someone who's willing to stand up to their far left and have a position other than just opposing everything that Donald Trump is doing.
Art of the deal or roll of the dice, and perhaps they're exactly the same thing. Tim Donner, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mark. I enjoyed it.
And that's all we have time for on today's special edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I've been your host, Mark Angelides. I'd like to thank our guest, Tim Donner, and of course you, the listeners at home, for taking the time to tune in and join us. Please remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, nor legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.